But I didn't, it's not true. That's like, that's too interesting.
All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. This is building a flexible design system for the Yale digital community. My name is Mike Tullo. A little bit about me. I wear two hats at Yale. I am a user experience analyst on our digital experience team, and I'm also the product manager of the Yale Sites platform. I have a Drupal username here and also my email, so feel free to reach out after this talk or whenever. So today I kind of wanted to share how we used user research to build our design system that actually serves as our community for whatever needs they have on web, on Drupal, or anything else. So yeah, we're going to cover kind of 5 main areas today. First, the user research that drove to our decisions, then our design system, what our design system actually is. Then we're going to show how we provided meaningful flexibility without overwhelming our users. We're going to go over our approach to over continuous evolution, and then kind of where we're heading in the future and with our kind of platform agnostic applications of our design system. So before we built anything, we did a lot of discovery work. Our project was a kind of a 3-year project. The first year was entirely discovery. So the majority of that year we were heads down doing UX research. We conducted 18 in-person interviews kind of spanning all over the university, from complete beginners of Drupal to kind of expert users. We did an online survey. We got 159 responses to that survey, giving us some good quantitative data. We did 6 user shadowing sessions where we actually watched people build on the legacy platform, which was definitely eye-opening. And then we also analyzed over 2 years of support tickets on ServiceNow to kind of get an idea where people were getting constantly stuck and where they were reaching out and things like that. So with all of this kind of gathering of insight, we developed archetypes or personas, as you may know them, based off of 3 factors. First, knowledge level, second, role, and third, approach. But kind of the best way to go about this is to kind of just talk about the knowledge level. So we had 3 knowledge level archetypes, the first being the uninformed user. So these people kind of just have content to update, really. And they really struggle with it. They say things similar to I have information I need to get updated to my website, but I kind of struggle to get it done. Ultimately, they need pretty intuitive interfaces and pre-built components to maintain their Yale brand standards. And they need a lot of hand-holding, especially. The second is the intermediate user. So these are the people who kind of know enough to be dangerous in a sense, but they want more creative control. So these users typically say things like, I would like more flexibility and to have more creativity in the look and feel of our current website than what the current templates offer. They need those creative options, but with some guardrails and some visual design focus without too much technical complexity. And then last, we have our expert users. These are our power users who often manage teams of people. These users typically say things like it's a challenge to get the right user permissions or to have the right access to certain tools. They usually prefer advanced customization within brand standards or without that, throughout that spectrum of brand standards. And then one thing kind of looking at these archetypes, I think it's very important to mention that while all of our users kind of fall into these 3 buckets, the majority of them, even some that are in the expert kind of bucket, their time on Drupal or building sites for Yale is not their main responsibility. This is the 5th or 10th bullet on their job description, and maybe it's not even in their job description, and maybe they only got this responsibility because they said, yeah, I've built a website once. They have things they need to do, and they want to do it and leave, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's just the card you're dealt. So that's kind of what we're working with here. So some common pain points. So 72% of our users found the administrative experience unintuitive and confusing. When I'm talking about the legacy platform, by the way, it's D7, so that gives more context too. So nearly 3 out of 4 users kind of struggle with that basic navigation. 61% wanted something to like look a certain way, but they knew what they wanted, but they really couldn't do it. And another 61% also spent too much time cleaning up code like HTML and they really didn't want to. They'd rather just focus on content and storytelling. And then 50% were just kind of manually just working with CSS for basic design elements, like changing the color of a box or something. And it's just not the work they would be wanting to do in higher ed. So these numbers kind of told us the story that we needed a different approach to our offering of Drupal. So what came from that? So what did we build? We built really 3 different things. One is the Drupal environment, which is its own thing. The other is the Yale design system, which is what we're talking about here. And there's this kind of like middle bridge environment that kind of connects the two and lets them talk to each other. That's one technicality, I'm not going to get into that, but we're talking about the design system. So this is kind of what we built. It's built, our whole project too was in collaboration with 4 Kitchens. So we used Emulsify, which is on the Storybook kind of platform. So everything was built on Storybook, and crucially it's separate from the CMS, and we'll kind of get into why and how later. And the goal was to create a consistent experience, but enabling some flexibility, right? So you want to not force people into the same box, but give them some high quality tools. So our main principles were uniformity, so consistent with the Yale brand. We talk about the Yale brand a lot. People internally say it's one of the most important brands out there. Say that what you will, but the uniform with the Yale brand. Inclusivity, so accessibility by design, not an afterthought. So everything that we built were tested by our internal accessibility team and meets the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. Also flexibility, so options without overwhelming complexity. We'll get into that soon. And then modularity. So these components are really cool, but what's great is you can choose whatever components you want and kind of mix and match and play. So here's a pretty concrete example. This is a kind of a GIF of Storybook. The top is actually the block that we're working on, the component. It's our Spotlight component. The bottom is some Storybook controls, so I'm kind of flipping through some of the levers here or the controls of this block to show you the different variations that you can do. So things that are important like image placement left or right, or kind of how people think about layout, background color options are from our approved color palettes. Content alignment, all that is controllable to our users, and it's just a flick of a button, not writing code. So, also with our design system is kind of our color palette design here. So we have a lot of color palette options, and you can select those color palettes in our environment, and it kind of gives you a real representation of what that means. Each color palette has these things we call slots. And what those slots do is essentially paint by numbers of our web components. So like you'll see our action banner here is changing with that. That's just the default. Depending on what color palette you have 5 options of that color. And those are all accessible. They're approved by our OPEC guidelines. So that's just another example there. So talking about color, I also wanted to make sure this is incredibly clear. We are accessibility is not an add-on here. It's baked into everything from the start. During the project, we conducted monthly Fable testing with every new feature that we produced. Now that we're more operational, we still do Fable testing and everything like that, but our accessibility team is ingrained in like our process from A to Z, essentially. And it's essentially impossible to create an inaccessible color kind of combination here. We go through visual regression testing. You can't have a color contrast issue unless we have a pretty big bug. So, also we have the Princeton module editorially. So obviously there are content accessibility issues here. That is to catch those as well. So we're doing everything we can to make sure things are accessible. So yeah, I've mentioned before that we're working on like an ever-evolving platform. We don't do like big giant releases that like break everything. Instead, we try to continuously enhance these components by regular releases every 2 months. Don't quote me on that. And those try to add like new options without breaking existing sites. And those existing sites maintain their appearance and functionality with our automatic updates through our CI/CD GitHub Actions and Pantheon upstream and all that fun, fancy stuff that I can't talk to because I'm not that person. But essentially what we're doing is we're upgrading your car while you're driving it, which is pretty cool. And we like it, our users like it, so very fun. And also our parties are completely community driven. So we analyze our user feedback through our support tickets on what to build next. We do bi-weekly office hours. We have training sessions every month, all while gaining feedback. We have a public product roadmap as well. We also have a public active bug page, so everyone knows what's going on at all times. And then we also constantly just ask for feedback or report a bug through our ServiceNow ticket queue system. So, yeah. Just a kind of example of just the growth of a component over time. This is our callout component. It's the blue banner here, not the text above or below. But initial release, we just released it as a callout that has one item in it with the header, the content, and the call to action. People were like, it would be nice if we had two. And we're like, sure, here's the second item. And they're like, well, now that we have two, we want to change the alignments. Okay, we'll change the alignment. You have options for that now. And in our next release coming up in a few weeks, we're also adding a pattern, background pattern. So it's just kind of showing the timeline of a component over time. One other interesting thing about our platform is it's fully open source. Units within the university can hire a vendor, and that vendor can develop on the platform and give back to the platform. So with that, units hired a vendor, and they were like, we need this component. It's kind of like an accordion, but it has an image. And we're like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but it seems like a pretty rigid block, right? You have this, what is this, an image accordion? Okay, it's a 50-50. Maybe we could say image left, image right. That could be a cool option. But the more we're thinking about it, the more we're like, well, what's the underlying need here? Well, the underlying need is people kind of want a 50-50 layout. And then when you have the 50-50 layout, you can put an image block on the left and an accordion block on the right, and then call it a day. So that's kind of what we were able to do because of our flexible design system and the foundation that we laid. And not only were we able to satisfy this one use case, but because we kind of leaned on this flexibility, we could do a tab on the left and a video on the right, or a quick links on the left and something. So there's just a ton of options that you can do because of this underlying foundation that we laid. So it's really cool not to see right now. So there we go. And one other thing too is, as I mentioned before, we have that third layer that kind of bridges the gap between the design system and Drupal, but that's not kind of our end goal, and it's not our goal right now either, because we're working on this proof of concept of connecting the design system to OutSystems, which is a no-code kind of application building thing, service or something. And it's using our design system and using the same components that we built, but not for Drupal. And that's kind of what we were trying to do with that one source of truth, consistent brand identity across all Yale's web presence. And that user experience that we have with those, well-designed interfaces and patterns is consistent and true regardless of being on this website that's a Drupal site, or being on this application that's the application built by this OutSystems system. So that's our goal. That's the proof of concept we're working on now. In the future, obviously, our goal would be it'd be great to have a React version of the component system, and we can't do that because of the storybook aspect of what we have here. So, yeah. That's all I got. Thank you. I know we're in the last slot here, so I'm making sure we're not going too over, but thank you. There's 2 QR codes here. The first one is just our platform site. You can view it and see. The other one is the public repo of the component library. There you can see the storybook environment. You can also see the repo of the platform too. It's all open source, so feel free to look at that. And if anyone has any questions, we could definitely do questions. So. Yes.
So, just a quick question. You showed all those versions for those cards.
Yeah.
Do you have any like definition or guard or just a limit? Let's say you cannot have 50.
Yeah, okay, so the question was, I showed this slide here, which kind of goes over the growth of a component over time, and the question was, is there any guard? Yes. So our job is to say, no.
No.
Yeah, no. We are very lucky to have the sponsor of our Office of Public Affairs and Communication, and whenever we get a request that's pretty significant in terms of design or whatever, we run it through them, and thankfully they're totally okay with saying no. So a common thing we get is Yale uses Mallory as their main font, and people just would like to use another font, and we're like, no, because OPAC says no. So that happens a lot. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm kind of curious about the situation you described where it sounded like a local group had brought in a vendor to design a component, which you, the central group, was maybe not in on from the beginning.
Right.
I'm curious, I don't necessarily run into that exact situation,
Mhm.
but that pattern of local group wants to do something that the central group has very strong representation.
Right.
I'm kind of curious how you ended up negotiating.
So the question was the interesting predicament of being here where a group hires a vendor to build specific features and us having the authority to say no. The one thing that we do say is it's very expensive to build a very custom site from the ground up, and what we offer to the units that hire these vendors is, hey, you can hire the vendor and they can build stuff, obviously with our discretion. But after they're done, you're in our system. We'll support your security updates. You'll be upgraded to Drupal 11 when that comes. We'll be upgraded to Drupal 12. Like that all is a part of our service. It's also much cheaper too. So that's the give and take. Like, yes, you can build these custom things that you decide you want to build, but you also kind of have that compromise. Also, whatever they build, everyone else gets too. So if you're on the system, you wake up one day and you go, oh, the It's Your Yale website sponsored this giant project and got all these new features, and I just got it for free. So that's cool too. Maybe not the people paying, but it's cool for the people not paying. Yeah.
The color palette
Yeah.
thing. So that's in the hands of any, like, what's the permissioning here?
There's, okay, yeah. So the question is, what's the permissioning behind the color palettes? At the moment, there is none. That's probably going to change. If a keen eye can see that the last two color palettes are like, if you know Yale, which I don't expect anyone here, but those are units saying like, ONHA is Office of New Haven Affairs. They would say today that they would love to not have anyone else use those, but we don't have that right now in place. So right now it's just like, we can give you an export string and say like, here are all the sites using these, and go and email them and say, please stop. But that's a feature we want to work on soon, of maybe pulling back a little bit of that, yeah.
Okay. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Functionality is amazing.
Anything else? Awesome. 2 minutes early. Perfect. Thank you.